everyone, this is Stephanie. Welcome to another video. So today we're going to work on the Reflections bracelet, which is using some very much the same beads as I used in the pendant and the earrings. Now you don't necessarily have to wear these together. They're standalone pieces, I believe. But here it is. It was a lot of fun to make this. Not hard at all. Actually, it went pretty fast. So before we get started, I just want to say hope everybody who was affected by this terrible storm, that you got through it okay. We had about 2 feet of snow. It was just incredible. I hope you're all safe and sound at home right now. And without further delay, let's get started. Chatons. We've got a 4mm round faceted bead. We've got a 4mm pearl. I've got a gem duo and a mini gem duo, so using both. So if you have the Enchanted Mirror collection, you have some of these beads. And then I've got an 11-0, a 15-0, and a Delica. And I chose this light bronze because, I don't know, I'm into it. We've got some jump rings. What else? We have this clasp. We have a clasp. I just didn't have another one handy, so here's a toggle clasp on here. I've got a size 11 beading needle. Have a 12 handy. You just want to go through the beads easily, so you might need a 12. And then I've got some 6-pound fire line. I use the thermally fused tough. I get this on Amazon, but you can use any 6-pound thread that you have. And then we've got another little, let me put a stop bead in there. So here's the stop bead. So I think that's everything. So again, it's all listed in the description box below the video. Sizes, shapes, colors, amounts, anything I forgot, any discount codes I have will be down there. So you need to click the down arrow, the show more, the box will open, and all those goodies will be down there. All right, let's get started. Okay, let's get started. So thread your needle with I go about 40 inches of thread. I put on a stop bead and left enough of a tail to sew in, and I usually leave about an 8-inch tail to sew in, just in case I want to play with that thread. So I've dropped down to my stop bead, a gem duo, an 11-0, a mini gem, and an 11-0, and I did that 4 times. I'm going to sew these into a circle by sewing through the first bead after my stop bead, which is this gem duo right here. So this is what we have so far. So now we're going to reinforce, but we're going to add a bead as we reinforce. So I'm exiting this gem duo. I'm going to sew through the next 11-0, the mini gem duo, and the next 11-0. Just like that. Then I'm going to pick up an 11-0 and I'm going to sew back through this 11-0, the mini gem duo, and the next 11-0. If you can't get them all at once, just do them separately. When I pull, it puts that 11-0 right at the point of this mini. So this is what we have. Ants with my reinforcing through the next gem duo, the 11-0, the mini, and the next 11-0. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to add an 11-0. So I'm going to pick up my 11-0, exiting here. I'm going to go back through this 11-0 and the mini gem duo, and the next 11-0. When I give that a little pull, I have another bead set up under the next mini gem duo. So you're going to do that 2 more times. Let's add our last 11-0. So I'm exiting this 11-0, I'm coming back around, I'm going to sew through the 11-0 and the mini gem duo, and then I'm going to advance through the next 11-0. So now we are all reinforced and we have those 4 beads in the center. Okay, this is what we have so far. So we're exiting this 11-0 right before the gem duo. I'm just going to sew through this one. So just like that. This is where we want to be exiting. Pick up 2 15-0s And I've done it in a bright gold just so you can see the contrast. So exiting this 11-0 here, I'm just going to sew through the next one of that, the 4 in the center there. It's going to place those in between the 2 11-0s. I'm going to pick up 2 15-0s and do that again through the next 11-0 and do that 2 more times. Last 2 15-0s through the original one I was exiting. This one looks like. So you want to reinforce that all the way around. And when I reinforce this, I skip the 11-0s just to tighten it up. So you might need to, so you can give that a try. So you're exiting the 11-0. I'm going to sew through the first 2 15-0s right there. And then I'm going to skip this 11-0 and sew through the next 2 15-0s. And when I do that, I just want to pull it so that that thread goes behind the 11-0. And then I'm going to do that all the way around. So when I do that, see how it tightens this up and it makes it a nice sort of diamond shape. And that's just by skipping these. But don't forget to pull as you skip them so that thread goes behind the 11-0 and you have this little diamond shape here. So I'm exiting the last 2 15-0s. I'm just going to sew through this 11-0 right here. Okay, so I'm exiting this 11-0 here. I'm going to sew through this one. I'm working my way over to here, and then I'm going to sew through the mini gem duo, and then I'm going to sew through the 11-0 after, and then the gem duo. So I've just worked my way around from here to here, up to here, through here, and then out the gem duo, just like that. And you know, every once in a while I just take my stone in my little chaton and I pop it in and I give it a little push, and I know that that's going right through that center right there. And you know, it kind of conforms a bit to the stone, and it kind of straightens out your beads a little bit. So you can do that anytime. I do it all the time as I'm working, just to make sure the fit is good. So I'm exiting this gem duo. I'm going to pick up 2 11-0s, a Delica cylinder bead, and 2 11-0s. And I'm exiting here. I'm going to sew through the next gem duo, just like that. Then I'm going to do that again. 2 11-0s, a Delica, you know, if you can use a Toho Treasure, whatever you know, cylinder bead, 11-0 cylinder bead you have. Just like that, 2 11-0s, the cylinder, and 2 11-0s. Exiting the gem duo, I'm going to sew through the next gem duo. Just make sure that sits in front. It's going to sit in front of the mini gem duo. So I'm going to do that 2 more times. Okay, last group of 2 11-0s. Delica, 2 11-0s. I'm going to sew through the gem duo. So now I have 4 of that sequence on. And then I'm going to go directly up through the first 2 11-0s and the Delica of that first group we put on. So you want to be exiting the Delica right there. Okay, so we're exiting that center Delica right there. I'm going to pick up 4 15-0s and I'm going to sew through the Delica on the next group of 5. So right there. Do that again. 4 15-0s. Exiting the Delica. I'm going to sew through the next Delica. That group of 5. You can put your stone in any time. You know, it's not going to stay. We'll have to reinforce it a bit. So 4 15-0s. Do the next one. And here I'm just going to pop my stone in. I want to make sure it sits in that, turning it over. So the point goes right there. See that? So I'm turning it on the side again. My last 4 15-0s. Through this Delica right here. then a pull. That's what it looks like. So you're going to reinforce that all the way around. And if you like, you can, when you're reinforcing, you can go through the 4/15, skip the delica, go through the 4/15, skip the delica, etc., like we did on the back, and it's going to make it, it'll make these lines more like a diamond, or you can just reinforce the way it is and make it sort of round looking. I'm going to skip because, oh, here's a unit that I did before, because I did skip the delicas when I reinforce, so I want to be consistent. So I'm exiting a delica. I'm going to sew through these the next 4/15, like that. I'm going to skip the delica, the next delica, and sew through the next 4/15. And when you do that, you want to give it a pull so that that thread goes in back of the delica. Then I'm going to skip the next delica through the next 4/15. And then a pull, and you see how it's starting to, those edges are starting to sort of get straight. Okay, so I've reinforced all the way around, skipping the delicas, and this gives me this nice little diamond. So I'm exiting these 4/15 right here. I'm going to sew through this delica. So this is sort of how I want you to be situated. You have your thread coming out up here, you know, on the side here, and we're going to continue on embellishing the outside now of the unit. Okay, so here I'm exiting this delica right here. I'm going to advance my needle through these 2 11-ohs, like so, and then through the gem duo, like that. And then I'm going to sew the bottom hole of that gem duo. I'm going to sew through the top hole, just like that. Next up, I'm going to pick up a 15-0 and a 4mm pearl. Exiting the top hole of this gem duo, I'm going to sew through the top hole of the mini, and then I'm going to pick up a 4mm pearl and a 15-0, and I'm going to sew through. I'm exiting right here the mini. I'm going to sew through the top hole of the next gem duo. So just like that. Let's keep going around. We're going to pick up 4 15-0s now. Exiting the top hole of this gem duo, I'm going to sew through these 2 11-0s, like that, the delica, and then these 2 11-0s, like so. And then I'm going to pick up 4 15-0s. And I'm going to sew through the top hole of the gem duo. So just like that. Next up, I'm going to pick up a 15-0 and a pearl, the 4mm pearl, exiting the top hole of this gem duo. I'm going to sew through the top hole of the mini. And then I'm going to pick up a 4mm pearl and a 15-0, and I'm going to sew through the bottom hole of the gem duo, just like that. Up, I'm going to pick up my 4 15-0s, exiting here. I'm going to sew through these 2 11-0s, the delica, and then these 2 11-0s. Let me straighten. Let me just go in this direction. Here we go. Can you see that? Yes. Like that. Oops. Here we go. And then we're going to pick up our 4 15-0s. I'm going to sew through the top hole of the next gem duo. So this is what it looks like. We're all reinforced, and then I'm going to sew through this, or we've added our embellishment. I'm going to sew through the 15-0 and the next pearl. So this is what our little unit looks like. Make as many units as you need minus your clasp, you know, to fit your wrist. So you know, you just have to play with that as you go along. I think I'm going to need about 6 or 7 to make a 7-inch bracelet, but we'll see, you know, when I'm done, how what it took. All right, so let's go ahead and connect 2 units together. Place my units, 2 of my units, just like this, and we have the thread that's coming out of that top pearl. So you can use that thread to connect your units. So this is what I have. We're exiting this pearl right here. And let me pull in a bit. I'm going to pick up my 4mm round faceted bead. Isn't that pretty? And I'm going to sew through, I'll move my hand in a minute, through the pearl on the other side. So I'm just going from this one to this one. Like so. So this is what I have. I'm going to pick up 3 11-ohs. So, and I'm going to sew through the pearl on the other side. So this is what we have so far. I'm going to advance back through the 4mm round bead, like so. Just moving it around so I can sew easier. And then through this pearl. Like that. Add 3 11-ohs. And go through this pearl. We're going back up like that. And then I'm going to sew through the round crystal, head it up to the top again. Like so. I'm going to pick it up now through the pearl right here. And that's going to sit that crystal on really nicely. It's nice and straight. Next up, I'm going to make a little picot at the top. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to sew through this 11-oh. So out of the pearl into the 11-oh. I'm going to skip this 11-oh here and sew through the next one. And I'm going to make that pop up. And as you pull it, it will pop up. See that? And then I'm going to sew through the pearl. Like so. The mini duo and the next pearl. Making that a pull. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to sew through this 11-oh. I'm going to skip this one and sew through this 11-oh, and I might as well just pop right down through the pearl at this point. And you see how that didn't pop up? You want that to pop. There we go. So when you pop it up like that, it's kind of that lacy look. And then you're just going to, you can just sew this thread, and at this point you can come down through the mini gem duo, through the pearl, and you can go through these beads a little bit. If you have a lot of thread, you can kind of snake your way around till you're exiting here again. Okay, this is what we have so far. We're going to add the clasp, and I did it on this end, and I just took our center attachment here and I put it on the end to add the clasp on. I use 6 units, and my bracelet's going to be about 6.5 inches. You can use less units, more units. You can add more of this at the end. You know, can double it. There are many ways you can adjust this. So you can add more, you know, jump rings to your toggle bar. So you have adjustment possibilities here. So what I did here is I added 3 jump rings to my toggle bar, like so. And I put 1 jump ring on the ring because I want to sew in that direction. So put your jump rings on your clasp, and then we'll put one end of the clasp on. Okay, let's add the clasp. So we're going to, we're sitting right here. So, you know, add a thread and exit one of the pearls at either end. Or if you have some thread left over, you can move your thread. So you're exiting here. So I'm going to pick up a 4mm round bead and a pearl. Just drop those down. Then I'm going to pick up 3 11-ohs. I'm going to sew back through the pearl. So just like that. And then I'm going to sew through the 4mm, like that. Just want to straighten myself out a little bit, just like that. Then I'm going to pick up a pearl and 3 11-ohs. I'm going to sew through the pearl on this side, like that. And then we're going to go back through this one. So that 4mm, going around a lot, through the pearl. And I'll just let you get to that point and then we'll finish the picots. Next thing with the pearl, I'm going to sew through this 11-oh. I'm going to skip this one and I'm going to sew through this 11-oh. And you go right through the pearl, like that. And I'm just going to make sure that pops up, that picot pops up. So you want to give it a pull. And if it fights you a little bit, just hold it there with your thumb and pull. So like that. And then I'm going to go through the mini gem duo and this pearl. I'm just going to move my piece a little bit so I can sew. And then I'm going to sew through, mixing the pearl, I'm going to sew through this 11-oh. Like that. Make the picot by sewing through the next 11-oh in the pearl. Like that. And now I have my little. We're going to add the clasp. So on this end, all I did was put 2 11-ohs on, and then I went through the ring and just reinforced like crazy. I'm going to do it on this end too. You could maybe use an 8-oh. I don't know, but this is so tight. What happens when I pull it? It doesn't. I'm pulling it pretty tight, so it's not coming out. So I think it'll stay really well. If you have another way you want to put your clasp on, you can. So anyway, here's my thread path right here. So I'm exiting here. I came through, I put on 2 11-ohs and I came through the ring, and then I came through this pearl. And when I tighten it, you see how the ring kind of sits right there, but you have to make sure it stays there and it doesn't go on the thread. So I'm just going to reinforce by coming around all the beads again, and I'm just going to let you do this. I'm going to do this off camera. But you just want to make sure the ring flows freely there and it doesn't sit on thread. And all the while you want to pull it really tight. So then you can go around again, reinforce, and then sew this thread in. But just make sure you're nice and snug right here so that the ring stays behind the beads, not on the thread. All right. So let's do that and come back and we'll finish up. We're back and we're done, and I pulled out all the reflections pieces because I think this is such a pretty color combination. I love the colors of these beads. I think they're so gorgeous. So here are the reflections earrings if you haven't seen them, the pendant, and look at the bracelet. So pretty. So absolutely had a blast with these colors. I hope you did too. I hope you make these, post them on Facebook in all different colors if you don't have these colors. I think it's really a pretty design, and I think it would look really different in many different colors. All right, so here we go. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.